I was 6 years old when I first saw my father hit my mother. It happened right after dinner. He had been quiet all day, sitting in his chair by the window, staring out like he was waiting for something to happen. He didn't say a word when he stood up. He just walked into the kitchen where Mom was washing the dishes. I was at the table, still eating my last bite of cornbread. He grabbed her arm, hard, and pulled her around. She didn't scream. She didn't even gasp. He swung his hand back and slapped her across the face. The sound was loud, like a board breaking. Her head snapped to the side. A drop of blood came out of her lip. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just put her hand to her face, wiped it on her apron, and said, "Set the table, Helen." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared. He walked back to his chair like nothing happened. Mom wiped her lip again and went back to the sink. She didn't turn around. She didn't look at me. I sat there until the cornbread got cold. I never told anyone. I didn't know you were supposed to. That night, I lay in bed with the blanket pulled up to my chin. I could hear my father snoring in the next room. My mother was quiet in hers. I listened for her to cry, but she didn't. I listened for her to pray, but she didn't. She just breathed slow, like she was trying not to wake up the house. I thought maybe if I stayed still long enough, the pain would go away. I thought maybe if I didn't move, he wouldn't hit her again. I didn't know then that he didn't need a reason. I didn't know that silence didn't mean safety. I just knew that if I kept my mouth shut, maybe I could keep things from getting worse. I started sleeping with my hands over my ears. I started eating fast so I wouldn't be at the table when he got angry. I learned to walk quietly. I learned to stay out of his way. I learned that love didn't always feel like hugs or kisses. Sometimes it felt like holding your breath until your chest hurt. I didn't tell my teacher when I came to school with a bruise on my arm. I said I fell off the porch swing. She looked at me for a long time, but she didn't ask more. She didn't call anyone. I didn't blame her. I didn't know then that people were afraid to get involved. I didn't know that silence wasn't just in our house. It was in the whole town. The neighbors didn't talk about the broken window. They didn't talk about the late-night shouting. They didn't talk about how my mother stopped smiling. They just gave us extra potatoes at the store. They just nodded when they saw us in church. I thought that was kindness. I didn't know it was fear. I didn't know they were scared of him too. I thought everyone lived like that. I thought every father had quiet hands and quiet eyes. I thought every mother just wiped her lip and kept working. I started keeping a little notebook under my mattress. I wrote down things I saw. I wrote, "Daddy hit Mama on Tuesday. She didn't cry." I wrote, "Daddy broke the milk jug. He didn't say sorry." I wrote, "Mama didn't eat dinner. She just sat in the dark." I didn't show it to anyone. I didn't know who I could show it to. I didn't know if writing it down made it real or just made me crazy. But it helped me remember. It helped me know I wasn't imagining it. Sometimes, when I was alone in the barn, I'd take the notebook out and read it. I'd whisper the words out loud. I'd say, "She didn't cry," and then I'd say, "I saw it." I didn't know if that meant anything, but I knew if I didn't say it, no one else would. I didn't know if someone would ever believe me, but I knew I had to believe myself. My brother Samuel was 3 when it started getting worse. He was small, quiet, and always followed me like a shadow. He didn't talk much. He didn't cry when he got hurt. He just looked at me like he was waiting for me to fix it. One night, I heard my father yelling in the kitchen. I ran in and saw him holding Samuel by the shirt, shaking him. "You're a weak little thing," he said. "You'll never be a man." Samuel didn't move. He didn't cry. He just stared at the floor. I grabbed his hand and pulled him behind me. My father looked at me and said, "You think you're tough, don't you?" I didn't answer. I just held Samuel tighter. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to stop him. I just knew I couldn't let him take Samuel too. I carried him to my room and held him until he fell asleep. I whispered, "I'm here. I'm here." I didn't know if it helped, but I kept saying it anyway. I learned to sleep with my shoes on. I learned to keep a flashlight under my pillow. I learned to listen for footsteps. I learned to move fast when I heard his door open. I learned to be quiet, even when I wanted to scream. I learned that the only thing worse than being hit was being ignored. I learned that no one was coming to save us. Not the church, Not the school, not the sheriff, not even the neighbors who brought us pies. They all looked away. I didn't hate them. I just understood. Silence was easier than fighting, but I didn't want to be silent anymore. Not for me, not for Samuel, not for my mother. I didn't know how to fix it, but I knew I had to try. I started watching him. I memorized his patterns. I knew when he was going to be angry. I knew when to hide. I knew when to stay out of the way. I didn't know if I was brave, but I knew I couldn't let him win. I was just a child, but I was still here, and I wasn't going to let him take everything. I was 10 years old when I learned how to move through the house like a shadow. I didn't need to be told what to do anymore. I knew when to clean the floor before my father came in from the fields. I knew to fill the water bucket before the kettle ran dry. I knew to keep my voice low, to keep my eyes on the ground, to never laugh too loud. Samuel was only 4, and he didn't get it. He would run through the house with his wooden horse, shouting, "Giddy up," like he was racing a real horse. I'd grab his arm, pull him into the corner, and whisper, "Shh, not now. He's coming." He'd look up at me with those big eyes, and he'd nod like he understood. He didn't, but he trusted me. He always followed me. When I hid under the bed, he crawled under too. When I stopped eating because I was scared, he stopped too. He didn't know why. He just knew I was the one who kept him safe. That winter was colder than usual. The wind howled outside like a dog trapped in the barn. I remember the way the windows rattled, how the cold crept through the cracks in the walls. I was sitting at the kitchen table, peeling potatoes for dinner, when I heard it. A shout, then a thump. I froze. I knew that sound. I dropped the potato. It rolled under the table. I didn't pick it up. I didn't breathe. I walked slowly to the hallway, my bare feet cold on the wooden floor. I pressed my ear to the kitchen door. I heard him yelling, "You stupid bitch!" Then a crash. Something heavy hit the wall. I peeked through the crack. My father had my mother by the arm. He shoved her hard. She stumbled back, hit the edge of the stove, and fell. Her head hit the metal with a loud bang. She didn't move. Her arms were spread out. Her eyes were closed. My father stood there, breathing hard. He looked down at her. He didn't say anything. He just stared. Then he turned. He saw me, right there, in the doorway. His face didn't get angry. It didn't get red. It got empty, like a room with all the furniture taken out. He looked at me like I was something he didn't want to see. He turned away. He walked out the back door. I didn't move. I stayed there for a long time, listening to the wind. The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. My father was gone. He didn't eat breakfast. He didn't say anything. He just left for the fields like always. Samuel sat at the table playing with his spoon. He asked, "Where's Mama?" I didn't answer. I made him toast. I poured him milk. I wiped his face. I didn't cry. I didn't know how to. The sheriff came by that afternoon. He knocked on the door. I opened it. He looked at me like I was a dog that had been hit. He said, "Your mama left. She left a note." He handed me a piece of paper. It was just 2 lines. "I can't do this anymore. Don't look for me." I read it. I didn't believe it. I knew what happened. I saw her fall. I saw the blood on the stove. I saw my father's face, but I didn't say anything. No one asked me. No one looked at me like they wanted the truth. The neighbors came by with casseroles. They said, "She's better off." They patted my head. They told Samuel, "You're a lucky boy now." I didn't tell them. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept my head down. That was the day I stopped believing anything anyone said. If they could lie about that, they could lie about anything. I didn't cry when they buried the bed. They took it away one day, said it was too damaged, said it smelled. I didn't ask where it went. I didn't ask if they washed the sheets. I didn't ask if they found her hair on the floor. I just watched. I watched them carry it out, and I watched them put a new one in its place. It was a thin mattress on the floor. My father slept on it. I slept on the couch. Samuel slept on the floor beside me. I started sleeping with my shoes on. I started keeping a knife under my pillow. I didn't know how to use it, but I knew I had to have it. I stopped asking questions. I stopped hoping. I stopped talking about her. I stopped looking at the window when I heard a car drive by. I stopped wondering if she'd come back. I didn't believe in her coming back. I didn't believe in anything. I just did what I had to do. I made the meals. I cleaned the house. I kept Samuel quiet. I made sure the water was full. I made sure the fire was lit. I made sure my father never saw me look him in the eye. I became a ghost in my own house. And I was okay with that, because ghosts don't get hurt. Ghosts don't feel anything. I found her scarf in the attic. It was folded under a pile of old blankets. I didn't mean to look for it. I was just trying to find an old coat for Samuel. I pulled the blanket away, and there it was. Her blue wool scarf, the one she always wore when she went to town. I picked it up. It still smelled like her, like soap and cinnamon and smoke. I held it to my face. I didn't cry. I just sat there on the dusty floor, holding it. I remembered how she used to wrap it around my neck when I was little. She'd say, "This keeps the cold out, Helen," just like I do. I didn't know then that she couldn't keep the cold out forever. I didn't know then that she was trying to leave, not just the house, but the pain. I didn't know then that she was broken. I just knew I missed her. I missed her voice. I missed her hands. I missed the way she hummed when she cooked. I put the scarf back. I covered it with the blanket. I didn't tell Samuel. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept going. I kept my head down. I kept quiet. I kept surviving. Because if I stopped, if I let myself feel it, I knew I'd break. And I couldn't break. Not with Samuel there. I still have that scarf. I keep it in a box under my bed. I haven't touched it in years, but I know it's there. I know it still smells like her. I know she didn't leave because she didn't love us. I know she left because she couldn't take it anymore. I know she didn't want to die. I know she just wanted to disappear. I didn't know that then. I thought she hated us. I thought she chose to leave us. But now I know. She didn't choose to leave. She was pushed out. By silence. By fear. By a man who never said sorry. I didn't believe in truth when I was 10. I don't believe in lies anymore. I believe in what I saw. I believe in what I felt. I believe in the silence that came after the crash. And I believe that if I had spoken that night, if I had screamed, if I had run for help, maybe she'd still be here. Maybe Samuel wouldn't have grown up so scared. Maybe I wouldn't have spent my whole life waiting for someone to believe me. But I didn't speak, and that's the truth I carry. Not the one they wrote on the note, the one I saw with my own eyes. After my mother left, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a place where the air was thick and heavy, like when you've been in a closed room too long and there's no way to breathe easy. My father didn't yell anymore. He didn't need to. He just sat in his chair, staring at the wall, or out the window, or down at his hands. He didn't eat much. He didn't talk to me or Samuel. But when he moved, I could feel it, like the floor shook a little when he walked. I learned to move when he moved. I learned to be quiet when he breathed. Samuel didn't understand why things changed. He still asked for Mama every night. He'd wake up screaming, "Mama, Mama!" And then he'd start crying, all curled up in his bed, his little body shaking. I'd go to him, sit on the edge of the mattress, and hold him until he stopped. I didn't know what to say. I just held him and whispered, "I'm here." That's all I could do. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't bring her back. But I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let him stay like this. I couldn't let us both stay here. One night after Samuel had another nightmare, I went to the barn. I didn't mean to go. I just needed to get away from the house, from the silence, from the smell of old hay and dust. I found him curled up beside the old milk cow, the one that used to give us milk before she got too old. She was lying down, chewing slowly, like she didn't care about anything. Samuel was crying again, his face buried in her rough fur. I sat down next to him, pulled him close, and didn't say anything for a long time. Then I whispered, "I'll get us out of here, Sam. I swear it." I didn't know how. I didn't know where we'd go. I didn't know if we'd ever have enough money for food, let alone a place to live. But I knew I couldn't stay. I couldn't let him grow up like this. I couldn't let myself become like my father. I was 12 years old. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a way. But I had to try. I held him tighter and said it again. "I'll get us out. I promise." He didn't answer. He just cried harder, but he didn't pull away. That meant something. I started working at Miss Lila's diner the next week. I told my father I was going to help out at the neighbor's house, but I didn't. I walked 5 miles to the diner every morning before school. I wore the same pair of shoes, the ones with the hole in the toe, and I kept them clean with a rag and some water. I washed dishes for 50 cents an hour. My hands got red and cracked from the hot water and the soap. My back hurt from bending over the sink. I didn't care. I was saving every penny. I didn't buy candy. I didn't ask for new clothes. I put every nickel in a tin can under my bed. I didn't tell anyone why. I didn't tell Samuel. I just kept working. Miss Lila never asked me why I was there so early. She just gave me the dishes and said, "Hurry up, kid. We got a rush coming." I worked fast. I learned how to stack the plates so they didn't slip. I learned how to scrub the grease off the pans without using too much water. I learned how to listen to the customers talk, even when I wasn't supposed to. I learned what people really meant when they said things like, "I'm fine," or "No, I don't need help." She had red hair that stuck out in all directions, like she'd just been hit by a storm. She smoked cigarettes even when she was serving coffee. She never smiled much, but she always looked at me when I came in. One day, after I finished washing the last of the breakfast dishes, she sat down across from me. She didn't say anything at first, just lit another cigarette and blew the smoke out slow. Then she said, "You're not like the other kids who work here." I didn't answer. I just wiped my hands on my apron. She took a drag and looked at me like she was trying to see inside my head. "You don't just wash dishes to kill time," she said. "You're trying to get somewhere." I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to tell her everything. But I didn't want to lie either, so I just looked down. She didn't push me. She just slid a newspaper over to me. "Here," she said. "Read this. The article about the girl who got into college with a scholarship." I didn't know how to read most of it. The words were too big, but I looked at them. She saw me struggling. The next day, she brought me a notebook and a pencil. "Start with the words you know," she said. "Then work your way up." She taught me how to sound out the letters. She taught me how to find the right word when someone lied. She taught me how to stand up straight, even when you're scared. She never hugged me. She never called me sweetheart. But she looked at me like I mattered. She was the first person who ever said, "You're smarter than this place, girl." I didn't know what that meant then, but I remembered it. I started reading everything I could. The newspaper, the menu, the signs on the street. I wrote down new words in my notebook. I practiced saying them out loud when I was alone. I started noticing things. Like how the man who came in every Tuesday always ordered coffee with 2 sugars, but never stirred it. That meant he was in a hurry. How the woman who always sat in the corner never looked up from her book, but she left a $1 tip every time. That meant she was lonely. Ruth said, "That's how you learn to read people. Not just the words they say, but the way they sit, the way they look away, the way they hold their hands." I didn't know if any of it would help me get out. But I started thinking. I started dreaming. I started believing maybe I could be more than just the girl who washed dishes in a diner. Maybe I could be more than the daughter of a man who never spoke. Maybe I could be someone who didn't have to live in silence. I didn't tell Samuel any of this. I didn't tell anyone. But every night when I got home, I'd sit on the porch steps and look at the stars and whisper the new words I'd learned. Scholarship, opportunity, escape. I didn't know if they were real, but I knew they were mine. I kept saving my money. I bought a second-hand coat with the last of my pennies. It was too big, but it kept me warm. I started walking faster when I went to the diner. I started looking people in the eye when they asked me if I needed help. I didn't answer right away. I thought about it. I thought about what they really meant. I didn't let anyone tell me what to do anymore. Not even my father. When he came home late one night and yelled at me for not cleaning the kitchen fast enough, I didn't run to my room. I stood there. I looked at him. I didn't say anything. I just waited. He didn't hit me. He just turned away. That was the first time I didn't flinch. Ruth told me that's what courage looks like. Not yelling, not fighting, just standing. I didn't know if I was brave, but I knew I wasn't going to stay. I was going to get out. I was going to take Samuel with me. I didn't know how yet, but I was learning. I was reading. I was watching. I was listening, and I was saving every penny. I didn't have a plan, but I had a reason. And that was enough to keep me walking forward, one step at a time. I was 14 when Ruth gave me that book. She didn't say much, just handed it to me one afternoon after I finished washing the last of the lunch dishes. "Read this," she said, and walked away without looking back. The cover was worn, the edges curled. I didn't know who Anne Frank was. I didn't even know how to spell her name right, but I took it. That night, after my father went to bed and the house was quiet, except for the creaking floorboards, I pulled the blanket over my head and turned on my little flashlight. I started reading. It was about a girl who hid in an attic with her family. She wrote about being scared, about not being able to go outside, about how people treated her like she didn't matter. I read it until my eyes burned. I read about her writing in the dark, afraid to make a sound. I read about how she wanted to be someone, not just a girl hiding. I cried, not because I was sad, because I felt like she was me. I didn't know anyone else had felt this way. No one in my town ever talked about being afraid. No one ever said it was okay to want more. But Anne did. She wrote it down. I wrote my own name in the front page, just below hers. I wrote, "I am Helen. I am here." That was the first time I felt like I existed outside of what my father made me be. The next morning, I took the book to school. I hid it in my notebook, under my math homework. I read it during lunch, under the table. I read it again that night. I memorized the words. I whispered them to myself before I fell asleep. "I want to be useful, or bring enjoyment to the people around me," I said out loud one night, not caring if my father heard. He did. He came into my room the next day while I was reading. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, breathing heavy. Then he grabbed the book. I tried to grab it back. He shoved me aside. He ripped it in half, then he ripped it again. Paper flew everywhere. He threw the pieces on the floor. "Foolishness," he said. His voice was low, but it cut deeper than a slap. "You think reading makes you better? You think you're smarter than me?" I didn't answer. I just looked at the torn pages on the floor. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I knew then that he was scared, not of me, of what I might become, of what I might remember. That night, I picked up every piece of paper I could find. I taped them together with old tape from the toolbox. I kept them under my mattress. I read them again, every word, every line. I didn't need the whole book. I had the truth inside me now, and I knew I couldn't stay. I started planning that night. I didn't tell Samuel. I didn't want him to get his hopes up. I took a cloth sack from the laundry pile. I put in 2 pieces of bread I stole from the pantry. I took the jar of pickles from the shelf. It was almost empty, but I didn't care. I took Samuel's wooden horse, the one he slept with every night, the one I carved for him when I was 12. I put it on top. I didn't pack clothes. I didn't pack shoes. I didn't need them. I knew the way to Aunt May's. I had walked it once, years ago, when we went to her house for Christmas. It was 9 miles. Through the woods, past the old mill. I knew the path by heart. I waited until the moon was high. I woke Samuel by shaking his shoulder. He didn't cry. He didn't ask why. He just sat up and nodded. I put the sack over my shoulder and took his hand. We walked out the back door. We didn't look back. We didn't speak. We just walked. The air was cold. The dirt was wet from the dew. My shoes were too big. My feet hurt. But I didn't stop. I kept going. I kept holding Samuel's hand. I whispered, "We're going to Aunt May's. We're leaving." He didn't say anything. He just walked faster when he got tired. We didn't stop until the sky started turning gray. We made it to Aunt May's house just before sunrise. I could see the smoke coming from her chimney. I felt my chest get lighter. I knocked on the door. I waited. I knocked again. I heard footsteps. Then a voice. "Who is it?" I said. "Aunt May, it's Helen. I'm here with Samuel." The door didn't open. There was silence. Then the voice came again, quieter. "I ain't opening this door, girl." I started crying. "Please, Aunt May. We have nowhere else to go." The door cracked open just enough for her face to show. She looked tired. Her hair was messy. She didn't look surprised. "Your daddy paid me," she said. "He said if you ever showed up, I was to send you back. He gave me $200. I felt my legs go weak. "He paid you not to help us?" She didn't answer. She just looked at Samuel. He was holding the wooden horse tight, his eyes wide. "You're not staying here," she said. "I don't want trouble." She shut the door. Hard. I heard the lock click. I stood there with Samuel, holding his hand, the sack heavy on my shoulder. We walked back. We didn't talk. We didn't cry. We just walked. The sun came up. The birds sang. The world kept moving. But I knew I had failed. I had tried. And I had lost. I didn't run again. I didn't even think about it. After that, I stopped talking about leaving. I stopped looking at the road. I stopped hoping. My father didn't say anything about it. He didn't hit me. He didn't yell. He just watched me more. He sat in his chair longer. He stared at me when I passed by. I didn't know if he was proud I came back or if he was angry I tried. I didn't care. I just did what I was told. I cleaned. I cooked. I washed. I kept Samuel quiet. I made sure he didn't ask for Mama anymore. I stopped reading. I stopped writing. I stopped dreaming. I put the torn pages of Anne Frank's book in the bottom of the wood stove one night. I lit it. I watched it burn. I didn't cry. I just stood there until the last piece turned to ash. I told myself that maybe she was wrong. Maybe you couldn't escape. Maybe you just had to live with it. But I kept the wooden horse. I kept it hidden under my bed. Every night I touched it before I slept. I whispered, "I'm still here." I didn't know if that was enough, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't run again. Not because I gave up, because I knew I couldn't do it alone. I didn't tell Samuel what happened. I didn't tell him about Aunt May. I didn't tell him about the money. I just said, she wasn't home. He believed me. He didn't ask. He just held the wooden horse tighter. I started working harder at the diner. I washed dishes faster. I took extra shifts. I saved every penny. I didn't spend it on candy or socks or new shoes. I saved it. I knew I couldn't run with my bare feet. I couldn't run with no food. I couldn't run with Samuel scared. I needed more. I needed a plan. I started reading again, not books, signs, menus, bus schedules. I memorized the names of towns. I learned how to read a map. I asked Ruth questions. "How far is Nashville? Can you get there by bus? Do they need workers?" She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me. Then she said, "You're still here. That means you're still fighting." I didn't know if that was true, but I kept saving. I kept watching. I kept waiting. I didn't run, but I didn't stop thinking about it. I didn't stop hoping. I just stopped showing it, because if I showed it, they'd take it away. And I couldn't let them take Samuel too. I still have the wooden horse. I kept it all these years. It's broken now. One leg is loose. The paint is chipped, but I still keep it on my dresser. I touch it every night before I sleep. I don't know why. Maybe because it's the only thing I ever saved for him. Maybe because it's the last thing I held before I knew I couldn't save him. I never ran again, but I never stopped trying to find a way out. I just learned to wait, to plan, to be quiet, to be strong in silence. That's what I became. Not a girl who ran, a girl who stayed. And when the time came, I was ready. Not because I didn't want to leave, but because I knew I had to, and I would, one day. I just didn't know then that David would be waiting for me. Not in a house, not in a town, but in the middle of a street, with a half-moon necklace, and a voice that said, "My name is David." Ellison called me into her office. She didn't smile. She didn't hug me. She just slid a piece of paper across the desk. "You got the scholarship," she said. "Full ride, room and board, books included." I stared at it like it was a trick. I didn't know how to read all the words on it, but I knew what it meant. I could leave. I could get out. I looked up at her, and she nodded like she already knew I'd say yes. But I couldn't say yes without my father's signature. I went home that night and told him. He didn't say anything right away. Just sat in his chair, staring at the wall. I asked again, "Can I go?" He looked at me like I was asking for poison. "No," he said. "You're not leaving. You're needed here." I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I knew he'd say no. That's why I went to Ruth the next morning before school. I didn't say much. Just handed her the letter. She read it slow. Then she took out her notebook and wrote something. She said, "I'll take care of it." 2 days later, she came to my house with a fake signature. She didn't even try to make it look good. It looked like a child wrote it, but it was his name, Elias Whitmore. She didn't ask if I was sure. She didn't say, "I'm proud of you." She just said, "Pack what you need. We leave at dawn." I packed 1 bag, 2 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, my notebook, my pencil, and the wooden horse Samuel gave me the day I left for the diner. I didn't take anything else. I didn't want to carry more than I had to. That morning, Ruth drove me in her old pickup. It smelled like smoke and coffee. She didn't talk much, just kept her eyes on the road. I looked out the window as we passed the fields, the barn, the house. I saw Samuel standing in the yard. He was small. He was wearing the same shirt he always wore. One hand waved, the other held the wooden horse tight against his chest. He didn't run after us. He didn't cry. He just stood there, watching. I wanted to scream for him to come. I wanted to tell him I'd be back, but I didn't. I just stared until the house disappeared. I didn't turn around again. I didn't dare. Because if I did, I'd break, and I couldn't break. Not then, not ever again. The school was nothing like home. It had clean floors, real windows, lockers with numbers. I didn't know how to use a locker. I thought the key was for something else. I didn't know how to raise my hand in class. I didn't know how to sit at a table with other kids and eat without looking down. I didn't know how to wear a uniform that didn't smell like dirt. I wore my old clothes the first week. I kept my hair tied back. I talked only when spoken to. I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. I didn't make friends. I ate in the library. I slept with my books. I studied until my eyes burned. I listened to music on a broken radio I bought with my allowance. I didn't tell anyone I was from Cedar Ridge. I didn't tell anyone about my father. I didn't tell anyone about Samuel. I told them my mother was dead. That was easier than saying she left. That was easier than saying he made her leave. I changed the way I said my name. Helen Whitmore became Helen W. I changed the way I walked. I stopped slouching. I stopped looking at the ground. I started holding my head up, even when I was scared. I started wearing my hair loose. I started talking louder. I didn't do it to be brave. I did it because I thought if I acted like someone else, maybe I could become someone else. Maybe I could forget who I was. Maybe I could forget the boy in the yard with the wooden horse. At night, I lay in my bed and listened to the wind outside. It didn't sound like the wind back home. It sounded like nothing. Cold, empty. I closed my eyes and I saw Samuel. I heard him. Not in my head, not like a memory, like he was right there. "Why didn't you come back?" His voice was quiet, not angry, just sad, like he was waiting for me to answer. I didn't answer. I just held the wooden horse tighter. I kept it under my pillow. I touched it every night before I slept. I didn't sleep much. I dreamed of the house. I dreamed of the kitchen. I dreamed of the way the floor creaked when my father walked. I dreamed of the silence after he hit my mother. I dreamed of Samuel's face when he waved. I dreamed of the way he held the horse like it was the only thing left in the world. I woke up every morning with my face wet. I didn't cry in front of anyone. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. I brushed my teeth extra hard. I washed my face with cold water. I told myself it was just a dream. I told myself he was fine. I told myself he was better off without me. But I knew I was lying. I knew I left him. I knew I didn't fight. I knew I ran. And every time I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I didn't see a girl with a scholarship. I saw a girl who ran away. I wrote letters to Samuel. I wrote them every week. I didn't send them. I put them in a shoebox under my bed. I wrote, "Samuel, I'm learning to read faster. I got an A on my math test." I wrote, "I saw a cow today. It reminded me of the one in the barn." I wrote, "I miss your laugh. I miss the way you'd run into the house yelling." I wrote, I'm sorry I didn't come back. I didn't sign them. I didn't put a date. I just wrote and folded them and put them away. I didn't want anyone to find them. I didn't want anyone to know I still cared. I didn't want to be weak. I didn't want to be the girl who couldn't leave. I didn't want to be the sister who left her brother behind. So I studied harder. I worked more. I got a job cleaning the science lab after school. I saved every dollar. I bought a second-hand coat. I bought a new pair of shoes. I didn't buy candy. I didn't buy a new book. I saved it all. I told myself I'd use it to go back, to get him, to take him far away. But I never did. I never went back. I never wrote a letter that said, "I'm coming." I just kept writing the ones I never sent. I kept the wooden horse. I kept the silence. I kept the guilt. It lived inside me. Every day, every night, even when I smiled, even when I passed my exams, even when I told myself I was free, I wasn't. I was just hiding. I graduated at 17. I didn't have a party. I didn't have a ceremony dress. I wore the same black dress I wore to my mother's funeral. I stood in line with the others. I took my diploma. I didn't look at the crowd. I didn't look for my name in the program. I just walked off the stage. No one clapped for me. No one hugged me. I didn't care. I didn't want anyone to know I was the girl from Cedar Ridge. I didn't want anyone to know I had a brother. I didn't want anyone to know I was the one who left. I got on the bus that night. I didn't look back. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring out the window, holding the wooden horse in my lap. I didn't go home. I went to the city. I got a job at a diner. I rented a room with a broken heater. I started studying for college. I told myself I was building a new life. But every time I heard a child laugh, I froze. Every time I saw a boy with dark hair and a small nose, I looked away. Every time I passed a barn, I held my breath. I didn't know how to be happy. I didn't know how to be safe. I just knew I had to keep moving. I had to keep pretending. I had to keep running. Because if I stopped, I'd hear him. "Why didn't you come back?" And I didn't have an answer. I still don't. I still have the wooden horse. It's broken now. One leg is loose. The paint is gone in places. I keep it on my dresser. I touch it every night before I sleep. I don't pray. I don't sing. I just hold it and whisper his name. Samuel. I didn't save him. I didn't bring him home. I didn't fight for him. I ran, and I carried his silence with me. Every day, every year, all the way to this house, all the way to this moment. I thought I left him behind, but I didn't. He was always there, in the quiet, in the dreams, in the way I still flinch when someone raises their voice, in the way I still look over my shoulder when I walk alone. I thought I was strong because I survived, but I wasn't strong. I was just scared. And now, after all these years, after seeing David's face, after hearing his voice, after seeing that half-moon necklace, I finally know the truth. I didn't leave Samuel because I had to. I left because I was afraid. And I've been running ever since. I turned 18 and walked out of that school with my diploma in my hand and a bus ticket in my pocket. I didn't look back at the building, not even once. I got on the bus headed for Nashville and sat by the window, watching Cedar Ridge fade behind me. I had one suitcase. It was old and cracked. Inside were 2 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, my notebook full of words Ruth taught me, and the wooden horse Samuel gave me before I left. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. Not to my father, not to the neighbors, not even to Miss Lila or Ruth. I just left. When I got to the city, I found a room above a laundromat. It smelled like soap and damp clothes. The bed was small and the blanket was thin, but it was mine. I got a job as a secretary at an insurance office. I typed fast. I answered phones. I made coffee for men who never said thank you. I worked all day, then took classes at night. Accounting, math, business writing. My feet hurt. My eyes burned from the light in the classroom. But I kept going. I saved every dollar. I didn't go out. I didn't buy new clothes. I didn't eat out. I cooked rice and beans on a hot plate. I wanted more than that life. I wanted out. And slowly, I climbed. By 25, I had my degree. I got a better job at a real estate firm. I wore suits. I had my own desk. I started making real money. That's when I met Charles Whitmore. He was older than me, about 32. He worked in construction management. We met at a diner, same kind of place where Ruth used to work. He was polite. He held the door. He asked if he could sit across from me when the place got crowded. We started talking. Not about big things, just the weather, the traffic, a movie playing downtown. He didn't try to impress me. He listened. That's what made me trust him. After a few weeks, he asked me out. I said yes. Our first date was at a park. We walked. We talked. He told me about losing his mom when he was young. I didn't tell him about my father. I didn't tell him about Samuel. But I felt safe with him. After 6 months, he proposed. I said yes again. Not because I was in love at first, but because he was steady. Because he never raised his voice. Because he looked at me like I mattered. We got married in a small church. No big party, just us and a few co-workers. Then we bought a house, big, white, on Windmere Hill, with a porch and a garden. For the first time, I thought maybe I was free. I thought I had left it all behind. The farm, the silence, the fear, the guilt. I thought I had built something real. Charles called me Helen Whitmore now. People at work respected me. I wore nice clothes. I drove a clean car. I went to dinner parties. I smiled when people asked about my childhood. I said, "Oh, it was quiet, small town." I never said more. I painted over the past like you paint over a stain. I thought if I stayed busy enough, if I acted normal enough, the memories would stop hurting. Sometimes when I passed a boy who looked like Samuel, I'd look away fast. Sometimes when Charles touched my arm, I'd flinch without meaning to. But he never pushed. He just waited. He gave me space. And I let myself believe I was okay. I told myself Samuel was better off without me, that he had moved on, that he didn't remember. I didn't write, I didn't call, I didn't search. I buried it deep. I thought I was safe. I thought I was healed. But I wasn't. I was just hiding. And then, when I was 30 years old, the letter came. It was in the mailbox with the bills and the grocery ads. A plain white envelope. My name written in shaky handwriting. Not typed, not printed. Handwritten. I knew that hand. I hadn't seen it in 12 years, but I knew it. My heart stopped. I sat down right there in the hallway, the letter in my hands. I didn't open it fast. I held it. I stared at it. I could feel my pulse in my fingers. Then I tore it open. Inside was one sheet of paper, folded once. I read it slow. "Helen," it said. "Daddy died last month. I'm alone now. I remember everything. Do you?" That's all. No return address, no signature, just those words. I dropped the paper. I slid off the chair and sat on the floor. The kitchen was bright. Sunlight came through the window. The clock ticked, but I couldn't hear anything. I just stared at the words. I remember everything. Do you? I did. I remembered everything. His face, his voice, the way he held the wooden horse, the way he waved the last time I saw him. I remembered the barn. I remembered Aunt May's door slamming shut. I remembered leaving him. I remembered running. And I knew right then that I had failed him. All those years of pretending didn't matter. The house, the job, the marriage, it all meant nothing if I had left my brother behind. I sat there for a long time. I don't know how long. The sun moved across the floor. The clock ticked past lunch, past afternoon. I didn't eat, I didn't move. I just held the letter. Finally, I got up. I went to my desk. I took out paper and pen. My hand shook when I started writing. I wrote, "Samuel, I got your letter. I'm so sorry. I should have come back. I should have fought. You're not alone anymore. Come stay with me. I have a house. I have food. I have love. You're my brother. I'll take care of you. Just come." I wrote it over and over until it sounded right. I put it in an envelope. I sealed it. I wrote his name. I didn't know where to send it. So I drove to the post office. I asked the woman behind the counter, "Do you know where Samuel Whitmore lives in Cedar Ridge?" She looked it up. There was only one. I paid extra for tracking. I handed her the letter. I watched her put it in the bin. I walked out. I didn't cry. I just drove home. I sat on the porch. I waited. Every day, I checked the mailbox. Every day, I hoped. I imagined him getting off the bus. I imagined hugging him. I imagined cooking for him. I imagined telling him about my life. I imagined him meeting Charles. I imagined him laughing. I waited 2 weeks, then 3. No reply, no call, nothing. I called the number the post office gave me. A woman answered. She said she was a neighbor. "Samuel," she said. "He ain't lived here since that daddy of his died. Left right after the funeral. Didn't say where. Didn't leave a note. Just gone." I hung up. I sat in the kitchen again. The same spot, the same floor. I looked at the walls, the photos, the furniture, everything I had built, and I knew it wasn't enough. I hadn't escaped. I had just run far enough to pretend. Samuel was out there, alone, and I had written a letter instead of going to get him. I should have taken the bus. I should have knocked on every door. I should have searched until I found him, but I didn't. I wrote a letter, and he never came. 2 weeks after I got the letter from Samuel, the police came to my door. Not in a car with flashing lights, not with sirens, just 2 officers in plain clothes standing on the porch looking at me like they were afraid I'd fall apart. One of them held a small envelope. He said, "Mrs. Whitmore, we found your brother in the house where you grew up, Cedar Ridge." I didn't move. I didn't ask how. I didn't ask why. I just nodded. I let them in. They told me he was found on the floor of his bedroom. The heater was broken. The windows were cracked. The power had been cut off for months. There was no food in the kitchen. Just a few cans, rusted and empty. On his chest, they found a Bible. It was old, the cover torn, the pages yellowed. Under his pillow, they found my photo, the one I had taken when I was 8, the one I kept in my dresser drawer for years, the one I gave him the day I left. He had kept it all this time. I didn't cry when they told me. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just sat on the couch and stared at the wall. My hands were cold. My chest felt like it was filled with rocks. Charles came over and held me. He said, "I'm so sorry, Helen." I didn't answer. I didn't even look at him. I just sat there, thinking about how he was alone, how he was cold, how he died with no one holding his hand. I thought about how he must have tried to get warm, how he must have looked out the window, waiting for someone to come. I thought about how he might have whispered my name before he stopped breathing. I blamed myself. I should have gone back. I should have looked harder. I should have called the police when I found out he was living in that house. I should have written more letters. I should have come back sooner. I should have been there. I should have been the sister who didn't run. I should have been the one who saved him. I didn't speak for 3 days. I didn't eat. I didn't brush my teeth. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark. Charles brought me soup. He left it on the table. I didn't touch it. He tried to talk to me. I didn't answer. He sat beside me. He didn't say anything. He just held my hand. I didn't pull away. I didn't let go. But I didn't feel anything. I felt like I was made of stone. The house felt like a tomb. Every room had his ghost in it. The kitchen where he used to sit on the floor and eat crackers. The hallway where he used to run and knock into the wall. The barn where I found him crying. The bed where he died. I didn't go into his room. I couldn't. I stayed in mine. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling. I thought about his voice. I thought about how he never asked for much. Just a little food. Just a little love. Just a little time. I thought about how I was the only one who ever held him. The only one who ever told him he mattered. And I let him go. I let him die alone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty. Like someone took everything out of me and left nothing behind. On the 4th morning, I woke up because the sun was shining through the window. It was bright, too bright. I sat up. My head hurt. My throat was dry. I got out of bed. I walked to the dresser. I opened the drawer. I took out Samuel's last letter, the one I had saved, the one I had read 100 times. I sat on the floor. I opened it again. I read the front. "Helen, Daddy died last month. I'm alone now. I remember everything. Do you?" I turned it over. I looked at the back. I had never seen it before. I had never noticed it. There, in faint pencil, written so lightly I almost missed it, were 2 words: "Don't be sad." Then below it, in the same shaky hand, "You were the only one who ever loved me right." I stared at those words. I read them again, and again, and again. My hands started shaking. My throat tightened. I pressed the paper to my chest. I tried to breathe. I couldn't. I started crying. Not quiet tears, not slow sobs. I cried like I hadn't cried in 10 years. I cried until my chest hurt. I cried until my eyes burned. I cried until I couldn't make a sound. I cried until I was empty again. But this time, I didn't feel nothing. I felt everything. All the pain, all the guilt, all the love, all the regret. I held the letter to my face. I smelled it. I felt the roughness of the paper. I traced the pencil marks with my finger. I whispered his name. Samuel. I said it over and over, like a prayer, like a promise. I didn't stop until I had no voice left. That day, I got up. I didn't wait for Charles. I didn't wait for the sun to rise. I got out of bed. I put on my coat. I walked to the kitchen. I made coffee. I didn't drink it. I just held the cup. I looked out the window. The birds were singing. The wind was blowing. The world kept moving. But I didn't want it to. I didn't want to go on. But I knew I had to. I went to the closet. I took out the old shoebox I kept under my bed. I opened it. Inside were the drawings I made of the necklaces, the full moon, the half moon. I took them out. I held them. I looked at the pencil lines. I remembered the day I made them. I remembered holding David's tiny hand. I remembered how I whispered, "You'll always find each other." I thought about Samuel. I thought about how he kept the photo, how he kept the letter, how he wrote those words. He didn't hate me. He didn't blame me. He said I was the only one who ever loved him right. That was enough. That was everything. I didn't need to be forgiven. I needed to speak. I needed to tell the truth. I didn't need to fix the past. I needed to make sure no one else had to live like he did. I didn't need to be brave for me. I needed to be brave for him, for every child who is hidden, for every woman who is told to stay quiet. I would speak, even if no one listened, even if they called me crazy, even if they turned their backs. I would speak, because Samuel didn't have a voice, but I did. I started writing that night. I didn't write a book. I didn't write a letter to the newspaper. I wrote in a notebook. I wrote everything. I wrote about the farm, the silence, the fists, the cold, the hunger, the way Samuel used to look at me like I was his whole world. I wrote about the day I left, the way he waved, the way he held the horse. I wrote about the letter, the way he wrote, "You were the only one who ever loved me right." I wrote until my hand hurt. I wrote until I couldn't see the page through my tears. I didn't hide it. I didn't burn it. I didn't lock it away. I left it on the kitchen table. Charles saw it. He picked it up. He read it. He didn't say anything. He just sat down beside me. He didn't hug me. He didn't cry. He just held my hand. And he said, "I'm here." That was enough. I didn't need anyone to understand. I just needed to say it. I didn't need to be believed. I just needed to speak. I didn't need to fix the world. I just needed to be the voice for the ones who couldn't. I wrote every day. I wrote about the truth. I wrote about the pain. I wrote about the love. I wrote because Samuel didn't get to. I wrote because I owed him that much. I wrote because I knew if I didn't, I'd die inside. I wrote because I was still here. And as long as I was here, I would speak. I didn't tell anyone I was writing. I didn't tell Jessica. I didn't tell Stephen. I didn't tell the police. I just wrote. Every morning. Every night. I wrote when I woke up. I wrote when I went to bed. I wrote while I ate. I wrote while I sat in the garden. I wrote until the notebook was full. Then I got another. And another. I didn't care if anyone read them. I didn't care if they laughed. I didn't care if they called me a crazy old woman. I wrote because Samuel asked me to. Don't be sad. And I wasn't. Not anymore. I was angry. I was strong. I was ready. I wrote because I knew that silence was what killed him, and I would never be silent again. I didn't write to heal. I wrote to fight. I wrote to make sure no one else had to die alone in a cold house with no one to hold their hand. I wrote because I was his sister, and I would never let anyone forget that he existed. I wrote because I was still here, and I would speak, not for me, for him, for every child who was never seen, for every woman who was told to stay quiet. I wrote, and I would keep writing, until the world had to listen, until the truth couldn't be buried anymore, until someone else found the courage to say, I saw it too. I didn't go to feel better. I went because I couldn't stay in that big house alone with the silence. The shelter was in a brick building on the edge of town, with a small kitchen, a few beds, and a couch that always smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. The women there didn't talk much at first. They sat in corners, kept their heads down, pulled their sweatshirts tight around them. I didn't say who I was. I didn't say I was rich. I didn't say I was a grandmother. I just showed up every Tuesday and Thursday. I brought clean socks. I made tea. I sat and listened. One night, a girl named Ellie came in. She was 15. Her face was too young for the way she looked at me, like she had seen too much already. She had a baby bump under her hoodie. She didn't say where she came from. She didn't say who the father was. She just sat on the floor next to me, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the wall. I didn't ask her anything. I just handed her a mug of tea. She took it, but didn't drink. Then she looked at me and said, "How'd you make it out?" I didn't know what to say. I thought about walking away. I thought about lying, but I didn't. I told her the truth. I told her about the farm in Tennessee. I told her about my father hitting my mother. I told her how I watched it happen and didn't say anything. I told her how I tried to run with my brother and how Aunt May slammed the door. I told her how I left Samuel behind when I got the scholarship. I told her I thought I was brave for leaving, but I wasn't. I was just scared. I told her I didn't visit him after he died. I told her I still have his wooden horse. I didn't cry while I spoke. My voice didn't shake. I just said the words like I was reading a list. When I finished, Ellie didn't say anything. She just moved closer. She put her head on my shoulder. She wrapped her arms around me and held on like she was afraid I'd disappear. I couldn't breathe, not because she was squeezing too hard, but because no one had held me like that in 30 years. Not since Arthur died, not since Samuel left. I didn't push her away. I just sat there. I let her cry into my shirt. I let her hold me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost. After that night, I started writing. I didn't write for anyone else. I didn't write to be published. I wrote because I needed to get it out of my head. Every night, after Charles went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a cheap pen. I wrote about the first time I saw my father hit my mother. I wrote about the smell of the barn when Samuel cried. I wrote about the way the hospital nurse looked at me when they told me David was dead. I wrote about the day I saw him at the intersection, the way his face looked just like Matthew's, the way his eyes were scared, the way he said, "My dad told me not to trust anyone." I wrote about the day Stephen told me I was crazy. I wrote about Sarah crying like I was the one hurting her. I wrote about the day Jessica believed me. I wrote until my hand hurt. I wrote until the pages were full. I wrote until I couldn't remember how to be quiet. I didn't edit it. I didn't fix the grammar. I didn't make it sound nice. I just wrote it the way it happened. I wrote the truth. Even the parts that made me feel ashamed. Even the parts that made me feel like I didn't deserve to be happy. I didn't show anyone. Not at first. I just kept the pad under my bed, next to the velvet box with the necklace sketches. One night, Charles came into the kitchen while I was still writing. He didn't say anything. He just sat down across from me. He picked up the pad. He read the first page, then the second. Then he kept reading. I didn't move. I didn't tell him to stop. He read the whole thing. When he finished, he put the pad down slowly. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't say, "You're strong." He just said, "This isn't just your story. It's a warning, a light." I looked at him. I didn't know what to say. He didn't cry. He didn't hug me. He just stood up and kissed my forehead. Then he went to bed. That was the first time I felt like someone understood me. Not because they felt sorry, but because they saw it. They saw what I lived. I started reading my writing out loud at the support group. I didn't plan it. I just stood up one night after Ellie spoke about her mother hitting her with a belt. I didn't ask permission. I just said, I have something to say. Everyone looked at me. I felt my hands shake. I felt my throat tighten. But I started reading. I read about the farm. I read about the night my mother fell. I read about the wooden horse. I read about the half-moon necklace. I read about the day I saw David on the street. I didn't read it like a story. I read it like I was talking to myself. My voice was quiet. Sometimes it cracked. I didn't stop. I kept going until the last page. When I finished, no one clapped. No one said anything for a long time. Then a woman in the corner with a scar on her cheek whispered, "That's my story too." Another woman, older, with gray hair pulled back, said, "I didn't think anyone would ever say it out loud." A young girl, maybe 17, started crying. She didn't hide it. She just let it happen. I didn't say anything else. I just sat down. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel brave. I just felt like I had finally stopped lying. The next week, I came back. I read another page, then another. I didn't read everything at once. I read a little each time. I read about the day I left Samuel. I read about the day I thought I was crazy. I read about the day I held David's necklaces and cried because I thought I had lost him forever. Each time I read, someone else would speak up. A woman told me she had been told her baby died, but she never saw the body. A mother said her husband told her she was imagining things after she saw their son beaten. A teenager said her stepdad said she was lying about the abuse. I didn't give advice. I didn't tell them what to do. I just listened, and I kept reading. I realized then that healing wasn't about forgetting. It wasn't about pretending it didn't happen. It wasn't about moving on. It was about saying it out loud. It was about letting someone else hear you. It was about knowing you weren't the only one who had been silenced. And every time someone nodded or cried or whispered, "Me too," I felt a little less alone. I didn't publish the pages. I didn't send them to newspapers. I didn't make a video. I didn't want to be famous. I didn't want to be called a hero. I just wanted to be heard. I wanted someone to know that a grandmother, rich and quiet and old, had seen her grandson alive after they told her he was dead. I wanted someone to know that a woman could be told she was crazy and still know the truth. I wanted someone to know that a sister who ran away could still carry guilt for 30 years. I didn't write to fix the past. I wrote because I was still alive. And as long as I was alive, I owed it to David to say what happened. I didn't write to make people feel sorry. I wrote so they wouldn't forget. I wrote so if another woman saw a boy selling gum on the street and he looked just like her child, she wouldn't laugh. She wouldn't think she was losing her mind. She would know what to do. I wrote so no one else would have to sit alone in a big house, holding a wooden horse, wondering if they were imagining it all. I wrote because I finally understood. Silence didn't protect anyone. Silence just let the pain keep growing. And I was done being silent. I didn't need a book deal. I didn't need a TV interview. I just needed to say it. And when I did, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a witness. And that was enough. I kept reading at the shelter. I kept writing. I didn't stop. Even after the trial. Even after David came home. Even after Sarah went to jail and Roger was locked up. I still wrote. I wrote about the day David first smiled at me. I wrote about the day he let me hug him without flinching. I wrote about the day Matthew ran to him and shouted, "I have a brother." I wrote about the way David held the toy car Rosa gave him, like it was the only thing he had left from before. I wrote about the night I found him crying in his room, whispering, "I thought you forgot me." I wrote about the way I held him and said, "Never, I never forgot you." I wrote because I still had things to say. I wrote because I still had pain. I wrote because I still had love. I didn't write to heal. I wrote because healing wasn't something you finished. It was something you carried. I wrote because I didn't want to forget David's face when he first said my name. I wrote because I didn't want to forget the sound of his voice. I wrote because I didn't want to forget the weight of his hand in mine. I wrote because I knew that if I stopped, I might start believing the lies again, that I was crazy, that I was imagining it, that I was too old to matter. I wrote to prove I was still here, and I was. I was still here. And I would keep writing. Not for fame, not for money, not for pity, but because I had lived it, and I refused to let anyone else live it alone. I still have the yellow legal pads. I keep them in a box under my bed. I don't open them every day. But I know they're there. I know the pages are full. I know the truth is written down. I don't read them when I'm sad. I don't read them when I'm happy. I just know they're there, like a promise, like a record, like a door I didn't lock. Sometimes, when David is sleeping, I sit in the rocking chair in the living room. I don't turn on the light. I just sit there. I look at the moon through the window. I think about Arthur. I think about Samuel. I think about Rosa. I think about Ellie. I think about the day I told the truth for the first time. I don't cry. Not anymore. I just sit, and I whisper. I told it, and I know that's enough. Because the truth doesn't need a crowd. It just needs to be spoken. And I spoke it, and I will keep speaking it, as long as I am here, as long as I can breathe. I am Helen Whitmore, and I am not silent anymore. 5 years ago, I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking cold coffee, staring at the same spot on the tablecloth I'd stared at every morning for 10 years. The phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. A woman's voice, calm but tired, said, "Mrs. Whitmore? This is Carol from Child Services. I'm calling about Daniel." I didn't know who Daniel was. I didn't ask. I just waited. She said, "He's 12. He's been in foster care since he was 7. He's asking for you. He says you're his grandmother. He has a photo of you. He says you made a necklace with a half moon and a full moon." My hand shook so bad the coffee cup rattled. I didn't say anything. I just held the phone like it was the only thing keeping me on the floor. She told me his father's name was Samuel Whitmore, that he died when Daniel was 6, that Daniel had been moved from home to home, never stayed long, that he asked every new foster parent, "Do you know Helen Whitmore?" That he kept a picture of me taped inside his notebook, that he wrote my name on his school papers over and over like it was a spell. I told her I'd be there. I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood up, walked to the drawer, opened it, took out the velvet box, and held the sketch of the 2 necklaces. I whispered, "Samuel." Then I whispered, "Daniel." I drove there in silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't think about what I'd say. I just drove. When I walked into the social worker's office, he was sitting in a chair. Small, thin, wearing clothes that were too big. His hair was messy. His hands were in his lap. He didn't look up. He was staring at his shoes. The social worker said, "Daniel, this is your grandmother." He didn't move. I took a step closer. I didn't reach for him. I didn't say anything. I just stood there. Then he looked up, and I saw him. Not just a boy. Not just a stranger. I saw Samuel's eyes. The same shape. The same quiet look. The same way he held his breath before speaking. His mouth opened. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just looked at me like he was waiting for me to say something true. I said, "You look like him." He didn't ask who. He just nodded. I sat down next to him. I didn't touch him. I didn't hug him. I just said, "I'm Helen." He whispered, "I know." That was all. We didn't talk the whole way home. He sat in the back seat, staring out the window. I drove slow. I didn't want to rush him. I didn't want to scare him. When we got to the house, he didn't move. I opened the door. He didn't get out. I waited. Then he whispered, "Is this your house?" I said, "Yes." He said, "It's big." I said, "It's empty." He didn't say anything else. I took his hand. He didn't pull away. I led him inside. I showed him his room. I didn't decorate it. I didn't buy new toys. I just made sure the bed was clean. I put a glass of water on the nightstand. I left the door open a little. He didn't sleep that night. I heard him. I heard him breathing. I heard him crying. I didn't go in. I sat outside the door, listening. I didn't want him to think I was watching him. I just wanted him to know I was there. He didn't speak for 3 days. He ate when I put food on the table. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say no. He just ate. He stayed in his room. He didn't open the window. He didn't look outside. I didn't push him. I didn't ask him questions. I just lived around him. I washed dishes. I folded laundry. I turned on the TV low. I made coffee. I sat in the chair by the window. Sometimes he'd walk by and look at me. He didn't smile. He didn't look away. He just looked. Like he was trying to decide if I was real. On the fourth day, I took him to the pond behind the house. I didn't say anything. I just sat on the bench with my fishing pole. I didn't expect him to come, but he did. He sat at the other end. He didn't touch the pole. He didn't talk. He just watched the water. I cast my line. I caught nothing. I reeled it in. I cast again. After an hour, he picked up the other pole. He didn't know how to bait the hook. I showed him. He did it slow. He didn't look at me. He just did it. We sat there for 2 hours. We didn't catch anything. But he didn't leave. That night, I baked apple pie. I didn't ask if he liked pie. I just made it. I put 2 plates on the table. I didn't say anything. He came in. He sat down. He ate. He didn't say it was good. He didn't say it was bad. He just ate. When he finished, he wiped his mouth with his napkin. He looked at me and said, "Can we do this again tomorrow?" I said, "Yes." He didn't smile, but he didn't look away. That was the first time he asked for something. He started coming out more. He didn't talk much, but he didn't hide. He sat with me in the garden. He watched the birds. He helped me fix the fence. He didn't say why. He just did it. One day I told him about Samuel. I didn't cry. I just told him the truth. I told him how Samuel was my brother, how I left him, how I thought he was dead, how I found out he was alive, how I didn't get to him in time. I told him how I carried that guilt every day. He didn't say anything. He just listened. He didn't look at me. He stared at his hands. When I finished, he whispered, "I miss him too." That was the first time he said his father's name. I didn't say anything. I just reached out and put my hand on his. He didn't pull away. He didn't say thank you. He just let me hold his hand. I told him stories about Arthur, about the company, about how Stephen was scared to be a father, about Jessica being brave. I didn't tell him about Sarah. I didn't tell him about Roger. I didn't want him to hate them. I just wanted him to know he wasn't alone. He started asking questions. Not many, just small ones. Why did you make the necklaces? Did you love him? Was he scared? I answered every time. I didn't lie. I didn't hide. I told him the truth, even the ugly parts. He didn't flinch. He just listened. One night, I was sitting in the rocking chair. I had a blanket on my lap. I was reading the newspaper. He came in from outside. He was quiet. He didn't say hello. He didn't go to his room. He just walked over to me. He stood in front of the chair. He looked down at me. I looked up. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he whispered, "You're not just my grandma." I stopped breathing. I waited. He took a step closer. He looked at me like he was afraid I'd disappear. He said, "You're my safe place." I didn't cry. I didn't hug him. I just nodded. I said, "I'm here." He didn't say anything else. He just sat down on the floor beside the chair. He leaned his head against my knee. He didn't sleep. He just stayed there. I didn't move. I didn't push him. I just sat there, holding the blanket, feeling his head against my leg. I didn't think about Samuel. I didn't think about David. I didn't think about the past. I just felt him, right there, alive, safe, with me. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. That night, I finally stopped blaming myself. I didn't fix everything. I didn't undo the years. I didn't bring Samuel back, but I had Daniel, and he was here, and he trusted me. That was enough. I didn't forgive myself because I thought I deserved it. I forgave myself because he needed me to be whole, and I was. I still sit in that rocking chair every night. Daniel is 16 now. He doesn't sit on the floor anymore. He sits in the chair beside me. He talks more. He doesn't always answer when I ask him questions, but he's there. He doesn't flinch when the door slams. He doesn't jump when the phone rings. He still doesn't smile much, but he laughs sometimes. He laughs when I burn the pie. He laughs when the dog barks at the mailman. He doesn't say, "I love you," but he brings me coffee in the morning. He fixes the fence when it breaks. He tells me about his friends. He doesn't tell me everything, but he tells me enough. I still have the velvet box. I still have the sketches. I still keep the half-moon necklace in my drawer. I don't wear it, but I know it's there. Daniel knows about it. He never asked about it. He never asked about David. He never asked why I didn't find him sooner. He doesn't need to. He knows I'm here, and that's all he needs. I don't carry the guilt like I used to. I carry it with me, but it doesn't crush me anymore. Because Daniel is here, and he's safe, and I'm his safe place. That's what matters. Not the past, not the mistakes, not the years I lost. Just this, right now, him, me, together. And I'll never let go again. I sit here every evening on this porch, just like I used to with Arthur. The oak trees outside sway a little, but it's not the wind doing it like some fancy story. It's just the trees, moving because the air moves. Daniel is out there in the yard with his dog, a big mutt he named Bear. They're chasing each other in circles, laughing, yelling, knocking over the little garden hose I left lying there. I don't yell at him to pick it up. I don't care. He's happy. That's enough. I'm 62 now. My hair is all gray, not the kind you dye. It's the real gray, the kind that came slowly, one strand at a time, over all those years I spent holding my breath. My hands are wrinkled. The knuckles are big and stiff. I can't open a jar without using both hands, but I don't mind. I don't look at them like they're ugly. I look at them and remember. I remember washing dishes at the diner until my fingers cracked. I remember holding David's tiny hand when I first saw him. I remember the way they shook when I held that half-moon necklace. I remember the way they trembled when I told Jessica, I saw him. My hands have done a lot. They've held pain. They've held love. They've held the truth. I used to think silence was safe. I thought if I didn't talk, if I didn't make a fuss, if I just kept my head down and did what I was told, everything would be okay. I thought if I didn't say anything about David, about the way he looked, about the necklace, about how Stephen and Sarah lied to me, then maybe I could keep my family. Maybe I could keep my peace. But silence didn't protect me. It protected them. It protected Sarah, who smiled at me every morning while she was planning to take my grandson. It protected Stephen, who chose to believe his wife over his own mother. It protected Roger Collins, who locked David in a basement because he wanted to hurt us. Silence didn't save David. Silence made it easier for them to pretend he never existed. I thought I was being strong by staying quiet. I was just being afraid. I was afraid of being called crazy. I was afraid of losing my son. I was afraid of what they would do to me if I pushed too hard. But the truth didn't disappear just because I didn't speak. It stayed there, in David's eyes, in the half-moon necklace, in the way he flinched when someone raised their voice. The truth was alive, and I buried it. I buried it for 50 years. That was my mistake. I carried guilt like a stone in my chest, not because I did something wrong, but because I did nothing. I didn't fight hard enough. I didn't go back to the hospital. I didn't search for David. I didn't look for his birth records. I didn't call the police when I first saw him. I thought I was protecting myself. I thought I was protecting Matthew, but I was protecting the lie. I was protecting the version of my family that didn't include a missing boy. I thought if I pretended David was dead, then I wouldn't have to feel the pain. But the pain didn't go away. It just got heavier. I carried it while I made breakfast for Stephen. I carried it while I ironed Matthew's shirts. I carried it while I sat alone in the dark, listening to the clock tick. I carried it while I held Arthur's hand as he died. I carried it while I watched Sarah cry and pretended I understood. I carried it until I couldn't breathe. I thought I was being strong. I was just broken, and I didn't even know it. But then I started talking. I told Ruth. I told Jessica. I told Rosa. I told Daniel. I didn't wait for someone to ask me. I didn't wait for permission. I just said it. I saw him. He's alive. They lied. I failed him. I said it out loud, even when my voice shook, even when I cried, even when people looked at me like I was losing my mind. I said it again, And again, and again. I wrote it down. I read it to strangers. I let people see me cry. I let them see me angry. I let them see me scared. I didn't hide anymore. I didn't pretend I was fine. I didn't smile when I wanted to scream. I stopped trying to be the good grandmother. I started being the one who told the truth. And something changed, not right away, but slowly. The stone in my chest didn't vanish, but it got smaller. I didn't carry it alone anymore. Jessica carried it with me. Daniel carried it with me. Rosa carried it with me. Even Matthew, when he finally understood, carried it with me. I didn't fix the past. I couldn't. But I stopped letting it kill me. I started living. Not just surviving, living. And that made all the difference. I found love again. Not just in Charles, who was kind and quiet and never pushed me. Not just in Daniel, who called me his safe place and now sleeps with the wooden horse I gave him, but in myself. I found love in the way I stood up for David, even when I was scared. I found love in the way I didn't give up, even when I felt like I was going crazy. I found love in the way I held Rosa's hand when she gave me that toy car. I found love in the way Jessica looked at me and said, "I believe you." I found love in the way David hugged me and whispered, "Grandma." That love didn't come from a man or a child. It came from me. From the part of me that refused to stay silent. From the part of me that didn't let them take my truth. I used to think love was about being nice, about keeping the peace, about smiling through the pain. But love is about standing up, even when you're old, even when you're tired, even when no one believes you. Love is about saying, "This is what happened," and meaning it. I'm not telling this story because I want pity. I'm not telling it because I want to be a hero. I'm telling it because I spent 50 years pretending I was wrong. I spent 50 years believing that silence was better than truth. I was wrong. Silence doesn't protect anyone. It just lets the hurt grow. It lets the abusers win. I used to think my voice didn't matter, that I was just an old woman, that no one would listen. But David listened. Daniel listened. Jessica listened. And now, if you're listening, wherever you are, whoever you are listening too. If you've been told you're imagining things, if you've been told your pain isn't real, if you've been told to stay quiet for the sake of peace, know this: you are not broken. You are not crazy. You are not too old. You are not too weak. You are brave. Just for surviving. Just for remembering. Just for still being here. Your story matters. Mine mattered. David's mattered. Daniel's matters. I kept quiet for 50 years. I buried the truth. I hid from it. I let it eat me alive. But I'm done. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm sitting on my porch. My hair is gray. My hands are old. But my heart is lighter than it's ever been. This is my truth, and I will never stop speaking it. Did you feel every word of this truth? And where in the world are you listening from? Tell me in the comments, because your voice matters just as much as David's. If this story reached your heart, show your support with a super thanks so I can keep telling stories that need to be heard. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Your presence changes everything. On the screen now are 2 more real stories that will shake you to your core. There are hundreds more waiting for you on this channel. Don't walk away without subscribing. You're not just watching, you're part of the truth. I'll see you in the next story with all my love and respect.